What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to another edition of the Locks DFS NBA breakdown video from locksdfs.com. I am your host, Christian Hardy. I am at ByHardy on Twitter, as you can see right here on the screen, and I am ByHardy on DraftKings, and we are going to be breaking down this 6-game NBA slate for November 5th. A much more interesting slate than one we had yesterday, where I think the margins will be very, very thin, where I think that every play is going to be very decisive and it's going to matter a ton because of these low totals. Because there's not a lot of obvious value on the slate like there was yesterday. It's a much different slate where there's a lot of slower teams, whereas yesterday there were a ton of pace-up teams. So we have, a much more tight slate today than you might expect. Before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys, please, if you're watching this video, hit the subscribe button. That helps out a ton. And comment on this video. If you comment, you have a chance to win. Comment with your favorite cash play, your favorite GBP play. Comment with if you don't agree with one of my takes, whatever it might be. Leave a comment. It helps out a ton. And, hit the like button as well, and you'll have a chance to win that free season pass from locksdfs.com. I was running the numbers on our season pass, and with 160 days left in the NBA regular season, you're paying about 60 cents a day for our content, which at locksdfs.com is going to be right here. $99, you'll get our lock sheet, which grades and gives analysis on every single player on the slate, as well as a cash GBP value kind of tier. You also are going to get our value rankings, our stud rankings for DraftKings. You're also going to get access to the Slack chat where we answer all the questions up to lock. So I think it's a good value. If we're talking about also playoffs, it's also down to like 45 cents a day, or maybe less than that. So I think it's well worth the value. Check us out at locksdfs.com. $99 for the entire season. And with that said, we can dig into the slate now. Cool. So obviously there's not a ton of crazy news. Like I said, there's no huge value that's popping out on this slate. That said, we did have this morning John Collins is suspended for 25 games due to, I believe, anti-drug policy. He said he took some sort of supplement or something that had a drug in it. So basically what's going to happen here, like I said, I don't think anyone pops out as like super obvious value, but the guy who should benefit the most is Jabari Parker. I think we're going to see his minutes bump. I think we're going to see his usage bump with no Collins on the floor. I would expect to see Jabari Parker start at the 4. I'm not certain of that, but because they like bringing Parker off the bench. But I think that the most likely scenario is they start Hunter at the 3 and Parker at the 4. They could mess around with the lineup, start Hunter at the 4, maybe Reddish at the 3, and then keep Parker off the bench. It's kind of yet to be seen. But regardless, I think that we're going to see Parker play a season high in minutes tonight, which you love to see for a guy averaging over a point per minute with no Collins on the floor this year. So obviously Parker's a scorer. I think they're going to need his scoring now with no Collins. So yeah, I mean, I think he makes a lot of sense he's over a fantasy point per minute with no Collins. And we know that he's a very solid fantasy point per minute producer. So if we see him play 26, 28, 29 minutes somewhere in there, I think that this is a very solid play. We also should see DeAndre Hunter get a small bump in usage, but at the same time, we've seen a very, very low floor from DeAndre Hunter this year. He doesn't shoot the ball. He hasn't shot the ball very efficiently for the most part. He's a great defender. He's a great two-way player. He can pop outside the three-point line, which is good as well, but he's really tough to depend on. However, I do think he'll be needed a little bit more to score as well with no Collins. He makes a little bit of sense of the value as well, but I do think I prefer Parker at just 600 more because you just have a much higher ceiling with Parker because he can do the scoring. Also for Atlanta, very small sample size this year, but Trae Young has actually averaged, I think it's like 34 minutes or something like that. Trae Young has averaged 1.87 fantasy point per minute with Collins off the floor this year. If you take it over the full year, back to last year, with Collins off the floor, he only averaged 1.16 fantasy points per minute or something like that. Obviously, we've seen Trae Young's usage go crazy this year in his first 3 games before the injury. And he is cleared to play today. If you want to take a shot on him in GBP, he makes a lot of sense because, with Collins out, while I mentioned that Parker is going to get a bump in usage, I think Trae Young should also see a slight, at least see this usage stabilize. He is at a season high in price. He does have a pretty slow matchup in San Antonio. However, Atlanta is also playing very slow this year so far. So, I mean, I think he's only a GBP play, but, if he sustains that 1.8 fantasy points per minute, very unlikely. I mean, just want to say that, very unlikely. If he sustains even like 1.6, though, he's crushing here, playing 36 minutes a game. GBP play for me. Going over to the other side, San Antonio. We do have LaMarcus Aldridge at the lowest price that you're probably going to get him at. Looking over the ownership the first time, he was getting pretty low ownership, which was a little bit surprising to me. Obviously, like I said, Atlanta is playing a little bit slower this year. That could be part of it, but still, we still have the highest total on the slate here at 220 on a slate that has a bunch of gross totals on it. He makes a lot of sense to me at 6.8K. One thing that I think I would want to note with LaMarcus Aldridge, I do expect him to be about 1 fantasy point per minute, maybe a little bit higher than that, maybe 1.1, somewhere in there. However, we have seen a significant hit to Aldridge with DeJounte Murray on the floor this year. Again, this is another situation where it's a pretty small sample size. DeJounte Murray has played 94 minutes this year with LaMarcus Aldridge. But if we take over the last year, without DeJounte Murray on the floor, we have LaMarcus Aldridge at 1.18 fantasy points per minute and a 27% usage rate. We put Murray on the floor, who has been outstanding. He's not a DraftKings play because he's too expensive, and he's still on the minutes limit. Once he's off the minutes limit, he's going to be really interesting. They said after like 10 games or so, they take him off the minutes limit. But with Murray off the floor, or with Murray on the floor, we see Aldridge drop to 0.82 fantasy points per minute and a 21% usage rate. So 6% usage rate, 0.3 fantasy point per minute lower. He's taking a significant hit with Murray on the floor. I don't know how much I want to read into that because the sample size is so small, but it's definitely something to note here because Murray has been such a significant player for San Antonio so far this year. Still, you're giving LaMarcus Aldridge 34 minutes probably if this game stays close, which honestly is a little bit of a concern for me. I was actually surprised to see that wrong page. I was a little bit concerned to see, or I was surprised to see that the Spurs are only 5.5 point favorites against Atlanta with no John Collins. Obviously, they're getting Trae Young back, but man, this Atlanta team is all-time bad. They're terrible. If Trae Young doesn't score 40 points a night, they're dead, for the most part. So I think this game could definitely blow out, and that's a little bit of a concern with LaMarcus Aldridge. He's going to be one of the first guys out if they do blow teams out. Obviously, you see this game against Golden State. He did come through with a solid game at this price. Not a great game, but a solid game. And he played 26 minutes. So, he can still get there. Atlanta is 23rd in rebounding this year. So, at the price, if you're giving LaMarcus Aldridge even a point per minute, and you're assuming this game is close, he's a pretty solid value on the slate. I think that his ownership will probably come up. I think that people are going to end up preferring him over Cody Zeller, who's at an all-time high in price. But we'll have to see how that goes. Okay, moving down the list now. We do have a little bit more of an injury situation here in Indiana. Really the only other injury situation that we know about as of recording this video were Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner are both questionable. I actually didn't know that Doug McDermott was questionable as well. Doesn't matter that much, but it's definitely interesting for a guy like TJ Leaf potentially, who had a really good game last game. And of course, the game that I played him, he got 2 fouls early and pretty much never saw the floor again. So Domantas Sabonis, questionable. Miles Turner, questionable. That could open up a start potentially for Goga Bitadze. I think that's how you say his name. Rookie for the Pacers, who we saw last game where this game he didn't draw the start. This game he did draw the start. We can pretty much project him for if he draws the start, probably 24 minutes, something like that. They'll still probably split up those minutes, but he's been a 1.11 fantasy point per minute producer with Sabonis off the floor in 57 minutes so far this year. So if we see Sabonis and Turner sit, we should see some minutes shift his way. We should see. I think that Turner being out would benefit Goga more because I think they want to play Goga mostly at the 5. He can play some 4 as well, but they mostly want to play him at the 5. So I'd be more interested if Turner's out. Turner was doubtful, but then it got upgraded to questionable. So it's just a situation we have to watch with both these guys. We really don't know what's going to happen with them, but Goga could pop up. Also, Brogdon is not a bad play regardless, but he definitely gets a little bit of a bump with no Sabonis on the floor. Just should open up a little bit more usage for him. He's at a very, very high price, the second highest price he's been all year, but he's still averaging 1.28 minutes without Sabonis on the floor. I think that he's going to be closer to he's going to level out here a little bit to an extent. Still, he's a solid play in this range, but if you're playing these Lakers guys, if you want to play both of them, it's going to be tough to get to a guy like Brogdon with on a slate that lacks a lot of value. One more situation in terms of injuries. I guess I should have mentioned all of them at the beginning of the video, and now I'm just remembering that everything I talk about at the beginning is due to injuries. Is this Boston situation where Enes Kanter is doubtful. I'm not expecting him to play. We haven't heard about the morning shoot-around yet, but I'm expecting him to remain out at least for one more game. Robert Williams should play. So Robert Williams makes a little bit of sense, but so does Daniel Tice. So Tice is actually priced up to 4.8, which doesn't make him like a smash play anymore, which he has been for the last 2 games, and he didn't crush value at those prices either. But Tice has been about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute producer with Kanter and Brown off the floor this year, but you can project him a bit above. You can project him a bit above that with just his career averages. I think you can expect him to go like 0.95, 1 fantasy point per minute. And obviously, of course, you also have a very, very good rebounding matchup, or a solid rebounding matchup. Not very, very good, I guess I'll say, against Cleveland. So Tice is in play if Kanter is out. Sorry, just clicked on Tice again. And then Robert Williams, if he's healthy again, I think we'll see him play something like 22 to 24 minutes. And he is very cheap. He can play the 4 and the 5. So I think that as long as he's good and Kanter is out, he's also a very solid value play that could garner some ownership. Again, if we see Kanter sit out. Okay, talking about some of the studs now. We obviously talked about Trae Young already, who I see as a GPP play. My favorite play on the slate. Oh, before we do that, I was just talking about Boston, and I wanted to mention that they are a really good matchup for opposing bigs. Boston is the worst rebounding team in the league and have really allowed a lot of big games to centers and power forwards this year. Kevin Love is priced at a very, very high price that you might not be used to seeing him at, but in this matchup, he makes some sense as well as a pivot off those Lakers guys. I don't think I'd play him over them in cash, but he makes some sense. Also, Tristan Thompson, he's been very, very solid this year, playing 32 to 35 minutes for most of the year. I think he makes a ton of sense in this matchup, even though he is priced to his season high. I think he still makes a lot of sense at that price in this matchup. How many minutes is Nance getting? Okay, just was curious about that. Okay, going on to the other studs on the slate. My top 2 studs on the slate are the Lakers guys. Chicago isn't playing as pace up as I thought they were going to play this year, but this is still a middle-of-the-road pace game. It is, the second highest total on the slate, tied with this Boston game. So I think we can also obviously to be a little bit concerned about blowout here at a 7-point spread. It's a little bit concerning, but on the road, hopefully Chicago can keep this game somewhat close and keep these guys, Anthony Davis and LeBron James, in the game. Both these guys are averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute this year. I think Davis will end up being closer to like 1.6, 1.65 by the end of the year, just because he's a monster, he's a freak, and so yeah, we're also getting Davis at almost a season low price on Davis here at 10K against Chicago, which is the worst rebounding team in the league. That's not only going to benefit Davis, it's also going to benefit LeBron James. I will be interested to see further down the road how Kuzma is affecting the usage on these two guys who have pretty much crushed value just consistently. Obviously, you saw Davis a little bit under that. But, if it's not a blowout, LeBron James crushes value pretty much every game. You see these 2 games here, both blowouts, didn't get the value otherwise, pretty much getting there every game. Also this Clippers game, but he was defended by Kawhi. So, both these guys, smash plays, top studs on the slate for me. Mentioned Trae Young, and then I also want to mention Nikola Jokic, who also, like LaMarcus, I was a little bit surprised to see him come completely unowned. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to get to any of these studs out in cash outside of the Lakers guys. I'm just not sure if that's going to happen yet. But Jokic, man, he has a pretty good spy here. I mean, this is the biggest pace up on the slate. Denver is bottom 5 in pace. Miami is, I believe, 8th in pace, 7th or 8th in pace. He's coming in at 13% owned, and he's at only 9,400, which is just a very, very good price to get Jokic at. It lowers his value threshold. It raises his upside in terms of point per dollar. So, with the biggest pace bump on the slate, it's definitely interesting. It's the second lowest total on the slate as well, even despite that pace bump, because Denver is just so slow. But man, if Miami can get out and run a little bit, Jokic makes some sense, getting a few extra possessions, and to do some stuff, and I wouldn't be concerned about any foul trouble here. We've seen Jokic get in foul trouble a few times this year, but not too concerned about that here against Bam. So yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. LeBron, AD, top studs, but I love Trae Young. I love Jokic. I love Kevin Love in terms of pivots off of those big chalk plays. Even Brogdon, if you can afford him as your third stud in this slate, makes a little bit of sense as well. So, although he'll get a bump with like Sabonis and turnaround. So, anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Reminder to follow me on Twitter at @byhardy. Hit us up locksdfs.com and comment and subscribe. Subscribe to the channel and comment with your favorite play of the day. Comment with your favorite GBP play. Comment with the take that you don't agree with me on, whatever it might be. We appreciate you guys for coming back and watching. And good luck today to all you guys. And we will see you guys back here next time. Peace.